All right, we are back with insider betting. We have UFC Vegas 103 coming up this weekend. Manel Kape is taking on Asu Almabayev. Not the best card, if I'm being honest. There's a couple exciting fights. I'll put that out there, but we'll break it all down here in a second. First things first, though. Jesse, how we doing, brother?
Doing very well. We're coming off of probably one of the better fight night cards, even though we thought it was going to suck. And
Yeah, a lot
I
of
actually
matchups.
just saw a really quick note that Seattle, I guess, had it's the highest grossing fight night ever in terms of gate. And everybody thought it was going to be the worst card. And I have to give a shout out to people of Seattle because the crowd was like unbelievable. Like I was talking to Ricky Simone about it. I've been to Paris, London. I've been to sporting events around the world. That was like the best sports crowd I've ever seen. It was awesome. It was so good, which is
Yeah,
like
the crowd
shocking.
looked electric.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome.
So you're saying it was the biggest fight night?
Yeah, the gate, I
Really?
guess, was like the highest grossing Seattle I'll look it up right now. UFC Seattle highest grossing. What would I look up?
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
It was it's the highest growing North American fight night in UFC history.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was awesome. I mean, partly because the crowd was so drunk, everybody afterwards was just wasted. But no, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
And now we go to the Apex where this card is kind of mid, but who knows? Maybe they'll
Yeah.
surprise us.
Hopefully they'll surprise us. I'm excited for the Esteban Ribovics fight. I think that's going to be the best one of the night, personally.
Well, yeah, you've got your Argentine bias
I know,
kicking
but
in right there.
look at his last fight, man. He was exciting, and I think he's going to
Yeah.
do the same again. But we'll break it all down here. Usually we don't cover the prelims, but today we're going to cover the feature prelim of the night. So we'll get right into it, and it was completely accidental. Austen Lane versus Mario Pinto was supposed to be the main card opener, so we prepared for it, and then they switched it up on us, bringing on Danny Barlow and Sam Patterson. But anyway, breaking down this fight, Austen Lane is a good friend of the show. He's been on a couple times. He's also a former NFL player. He's coming off of a win against Robelis de Spain, who's no longer in the UFC. But basically, everyone kind of counted him out for that fight, I think. Not a lot of people thought he could get it done, but he showed that he could. Robelis de Spain wasn't what everyone thought he was going to be. And I was one of those people. I thought Robelis de Spain was going to get the better of him. But with that being said, I'm going to have to go against Austen Lane again this week, I think. Really the same reasoning that I went against him against Robelis de Spain. I really struggled picking kind of like wrestling heavyweights in a sense against like a good striker in heavyweights, because in the heavyweight division, all it takes is just one solid punch and you're out, And we saw it with Mario Pinto in his contender series debut. He got a knockout in the first 2 minutes of the first round, and he kind of just showed up. Something that I like about Mario Pinto that I guess didn't really get a chance to see with Robelis de Spain is that he picks his shots very well. You can see, like, obviously these stats are pretty skewed because they're based off his contender series debut, but he had a 93% striking accuracy. He's not just throwing to throw, he's throwing to land, and he tends to land a lot of the time. He's very calm, he's very cool, he's very collected. We don't know what his what his takedown defense is like. Austen Lane might be able to push him up against the fence and take him down a few times. That's what he's good at. Yeah, I just can't get behind Austen Lane. It's difficult for me. And I know we've seen like heavyweights like Jailton Almeida, who's like an elite grappler, have a lot of success in the UFC. But like even with someone as elite as him, he showed us that it takes one punch and one mistake as a wrestler in the heavyweight division to get knocked out when Curtis Blades knocked him out, So yeah, I got Mario Pinto here. I actually think I have my odds backwards on there. Mario Pinto is minus 470 and Austen Lane's plus 360. So he's a heavy favorite, Mario Pinto, going into this fight.
Okay, that changes everything for me because I was literally gonna slam the money line here on Pinto. I mean, like that was crazy. Now that makes a lot more sense. I'll check what it is on Draft. Was that from DraftKings?
That's from DraftKings. Yeah, he's a 5-1 favorite.
Okay, yeah, that changes
My bad.
everything there.
I just noticed because I was like, those shouldn't
Yeah.
be the odds.
Oh my God. Yeah, he's a minus 535 right now on DraftKings.
Wow. The minus 470 was this morning. So that's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, like just considering Lane was a huge underdog against Despain when they fought, and then he wrestled him, so he did beat those odds. So you do have to kind of take him seriously. But 9-0, this guy's 26, he's 9-0. Heavyweight is the division where age doesn't play as much of a factor. It's not as
Correct.
big of a deal in heavyweight, just because the speed factor is minimal, whereas in the power factor is always there, no matter how old you are. So, I mean, I like Austen Lane's story, and I like the fact that he ended Despain's hype train. Worth noting, he thought that he was going to get cut by the UFC if he lost to Rebellis Despain. So logic suggests to me that he kind of feels the same way here going into this fight. If you lose to an up-and-coming prospect, especially if your fight's boring, and he's had a couple of boring decision fights, it's like he could be on the way out. I like Pinto in this, but I'm not going to bet. I wouldn't bet money line. KO is just FYI, a knockout. The odds on that are a minus 150. If you feel like just betting that straight up.
Just for the fight to end a knockout, or Austin
For
Lane?
Mario Pinto to win by
Oh,
knockout.
Mario Pinto.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because I feel like that's the only way he wins. I don't know if he wins a decision here, unless he's really piecing him up, and Austin Lane can't get anything going on the ground. But you'd assume if it goes the full 3 rounds that Austin would get something going.
The longer it goes, the more it favors Austin being able to get some wrestling in. But I don't know how many knockouts does Austin Lane have. I'm not entirely sure.
A lot.
He's 11. Yeah, I mean, it's not like he's totally wrestling heavy. 11 of his 13 wins are by knockout.
Yeah, so, I think it might be a lot of ground and pound with him. Like he takes you down and then gets the TKO that way. But
it's a plus 600 for him to win by knockout if you feel like really making a sprinkle here. So, just FYI.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah. Anyway, we'll go on to the main card opener here. We got Danny Barlow versus Sam Patterson. Sam Patterson is a good friend of Mike Owens, who's our head reporter at Inside Fighting. So we got to show him some love there. But the love will be a little short-winded, I think. Danny Barlow's 9-0 coming into this fight. He's got 5 knockouts, 1 submission win, and 3 decision wins. He's got 2 wins in the UFC. He's currently 2-0. He beat Nikolai Veretennikov and Josh Quinlan. Where Sam Patterson, on the other hand, is 2-1 in the UFC. He's coming off of 2 wins. He beat Kiefer Crosby and Johan Lainez. But his UFC debut, he lost to Yanala Shmuz by knockout, which I think is really important to note. This is kind of like a striker versus grappler match, as you can kind of see by the numbers on the screen. And Danny Barlow has had great takedown defense in the UFC so far at 100%. So if he can keep that going, I just don't see Sam Patterson being able to keep up on the feet. I think Danny is far superior there. But we haven't really seen Danny on the ground. So if Sam's able to take him down a couple of times, then maybe it changes how the fight goes. I will say that both of Sam's wins have been against opponents coming off of a loss. Which I think is really important to note sometimes because it kind of shows the mentality that fighters are coming into it and the quality of them. And also, Johan Lainez isn't even in the UFC anymore. He got cut after the Sam Patterson fight, after the Sam Patterson fights, and he now fights in the LFA, I believe. So, yeah, I got Danny Barlow. I think it's going to be a KO finish most likely. He's got 5 of those out of his 9 wins, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think it's one of those fights that the longer it goes on, the more it favors Sam Patterson. Danny's Contender Series fight was a knockout win. His first fight in the UFC was a knockout win. And then that second fight in the UFC was a split decision win, I believe. So clearly decision is not great for him. Winning by splits, kind of like 50-50 toss-up with judges. So I wouldn't favor those odds, especially with a few takedowns by Sam. So it's got to be a KO or just like a finish in general, KO submission for Danny to get it done, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Patterson has a higher finish rate than Barlow. Barlow's 5 of his 9 wins are by knockout. He does have 1 submission. Um, I don't know. I'm a little conflicted about this one just because I do feel like the Vretnikov fight was split decision, and partially like I feel like Barlow kind of took a little bit of a his aura took a little bit of a hit in that fight because he did show some like weaknesses in his like grappling defense. And a guy heavy wrestling or heavy grappling like Sam obviously doesn't have the stand-up game of Barlow, but he can make this a fight. And I don't know, I kind of like the odds on Patterson here because I do feel like he's definitely a candidate to get knocked out, like no question about it. Like I don't think that this fight can stay on the feet very long, but I think if we get into the second round, like I could see Patterson pulling this one out because I didn't like the way Barlow looked on the ground in his last fight. But
Yeah.
like I'm also basing it off of one performance because before that he looked untouchable. But it's like other than his first round knockout, his other knockout came with like it was like late in the third round,
Yeah.
and then he's coming off a split decision. So I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on this one. I'm not going to lie. I'm not totally sold on Danny Barlow yet, I guess is the point, where I feel like this might be closer to 50-50 than the odds might indicate. And when it's a grappler, excuse me, against a striker, I kind of tend to, favor the grappler. So I think I'm gonna pick the upset on this, and I don't love it, but I think that I like the odds enough to do it.
Yeah. No, I feel that.
I could be totally wrong, and he just gets fucking knocked out in the first round, obviously. But
Yeah, it's funny, like, with these grapplers, like, we always assume that they got a bigger gas tank than the other guys, but we don't even know
right,
that with Sam Patterson. He hasn't gone past the first round in the UFC yet. He went to the second round in Contender Series. But yeah,
yeah,
so we'll have to see what happens. But it should be an interesting fight. Moving on here, we got Hyder Amil versus William Gomis, someone who you got to watch live in UFC Paris, which is kind of cool. Um, they're both coming off of wins, and they're both on win streaks here. Hyder Amil, he's 10-0 as a professional. He's 2-0 in the UFC right now. William Gomis is 4-0 in the UFC, and he's on a 12-fight win streak overall. And he comes in at 14-2. I remember covering William Gomis versus Joanderson Brito before the Paris card, and I remember being so heavy on Joanderson. I thought he was just going to come in heavy pressure. He was going to get the win. He was going to get the knockout. I thought it was going to be too much for someone as technical as William Gomis. And when I look at this fight, I look at Hyder Amil as like a worse version of Joanderson Brito, you know? And my first thought is like, well, if Joe Anderson couldn't get it done, why could Amil get it done? You know? So I'm going with William Gomis, although it's probably the one. I don't know. There's something about these like technical strikers that I just like. I think they do really well in the beginning of their UFC career when they're fighting smaller guys, and then they kind of do worse off when it comes to like bigger fights. We kind of saw that with and I love Sugar Sean, but we saw that with Sean and Marab, right? Sean picks his shots. He's kind of like a little bit off the pressure. He knows when to turn it on, and sometimes it works for him. We saw it work in the Aljo fight, but when it push came to shove against Marab, it didn't work, So I don't know. I'm still riding with Gomis. I think that against lower level opponents, he'll be very good and he'll continue his win streak. And I think when it comes to like a bigger fighter, he might struggle. But Hyder Amil is still a small opponent in my opinion. So I got Gomis.
yeah. Hyder Amil, member of the Scrap Pack, teammates with Nate Diaz. He's like he's kind of come out of nowhere a little bit, just in terms of being like a name. He's kind of becoming like a popular name, but I'm looking at his numbers here, and Brito's just sorry, I'm looking at the wrong person. William Gomis. Gomis just has been up against much tougher competition, I think, is the problem that Hyder Amil is going to have in this fight, because he's just been in really, really good competitive fights in the UFC. Low finish rate, but I mean, at the same time, like he beat Yanis Gamori, and Gamori's not in the UFC anymore. Split decision against Brito, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's not as if Gomis has been some like world beater here, even
No.
though he's looked pretty good. I might pick an upset here too again, just because I thought Hyder Amil like really looked good in his last fight, and he's sort of become a. This might be me picking him with my heart a little bit, just because I've seen like video of him train with the scrap pack, hang with those guys.
Yeah.
His knockout against Jung Young Lee was like so spectacular. It was like he went like crazy. He just threw like 75 punches in like 20 seconds. It was nuts.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just look at guys like that. I think he's like a dog. Like he can go to deep waters, where I question if Gomis will go to deep waters
Yeah.
with a guy like this. So I don't know. I kind of like the upset again.
I
And
agree. I agree. And you know what? I also had that thought, and I was like, man, we kind of saw him going deep waters with Brito.
yeah,
Because so it's very, again, 50. I think this fight is a lot more 50-50 than the odds suggest.
yeah,
But I think that odds makers just give him like a little bit of a boost, just because you're right. He's fought some bigger opponents and better opponents.
yeah.
Just because he's been in the UFC longer. That's all.
Yeah, it's tough though. It's tough with guys like this, because this feels like it feels like it's going to set the sort of one of these guys is going to get a ranked opponent in the next couple of fights, and
Yeah.
this is going to sort of
Agreed.
determine who it's going to be. Hyder Amil, though, he's older. He needs to get the win way more, but I don't know. Now I'm looking at Gomis's reach and his height and stuff, and I'm not loving it. But
I was gonna say that like a
yeah,
meal is gonna have to make it a dog fight. He's gonna have to
yeah.
get in there, right? Like he doesn't have the reach. He's gonna have to do what Esteban Ribovics did to Zellhuber, basically.
Well, it's by
And it just
strategy, right? Because he can't. He never has reach by people, so he sort of has to. He has
exactly.
no choice. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
So,
yeah.
but we'll see. It's the same thing Drew Anderson Brito had to do, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
But anyway, moving on to the next fight of the night. It's the feature fight. We have Nasrat versus Esteban Ribovics. I wasn't even gonna go
Yeah.
for that last name. Haqparast.
Haqparast, I guess. Yeah.
Haqparast. Yeah. Anyway, Esteban Ribovics. I was blessed with the opportunity to get to see this guy live, and it just like raised his stock for me so much more. I saw him at the Sphere for UFC 306. I was the only one in my section rooting for Esteban. It was Mexican Independence Day. Zellhuber is Mexican. Everybody was cheering for Zellhuber there, and I thought that Esteban was going to do exactly what he did: make it a dogfight, get in there, and just pull out a quick win. I believe that one went to split decision, which was interesting. But yeah, I still love Esteban. Funny enough, he actually opened as a 2-1. Nasrat opened as a 2-1 favorite coming into this fight. He was minus 210, I believe, and
No
now he's a
way.
plus 230. Yeah, so now he's a 2-1 dog. I guess a
That's
lot of people have been
crazy.
putting money on Esteban and think he can get it done. So the odds makers, or so the odds have shifted in general. But when I look at this fight versus like the Zellhuber fight, I think we're looking at two very, very similar fighters. You know, we have two fighters who are high pressure, high volume, can mix in the ground game if need be, but I think they both prefer not to. But I think that Esteban takes the slighter advantage in just everything, right? Like he throws just a little bit more strikes. He hits just a little bit more. He gets hit just a little bit less. He's just a little bit better at takedowns. He's just a little bit better at his defense. And I think that little bit is just enough to get him the win. I don't know if it's going to be like a finish. I think it might go to decision. And that's just out of respecting Nasrat here, who's 17-5, beats everyone he's supposed to beat, and loses to people like Bobby Green and Dan Hooker.
Right.
Right. But I just think Esteban's on the rise. He's on a 3-5 win streak. He's beaten Terrence McKinney. He was probably an underdog against that. He beat Zellhuber. He was an underdog against that. And it's the first time he's going into the fight. Or I don't know if it's the first time overall, but at least in recency that he's going in as a favorite. And he wasn't even supposed to be the favorite going into it. So I got Ribovics. I think he's a great fighter, and I think he's got a bright future in the UFC personally.
I can't believe those odds that you were telling me that it started with Haqparast being the favorite. Every time I look at Haqparast, I feel like I'm looking at Kelvin Gastelum. It trips me out. I feel like I'm always
Yeah,
looking.
I see
Uh,
that.
no, Ribovics is kind of like becoming like a little bit of like one of my favorite fighters just because of how he fights. He's just like he's all in all the time. There is no like dance around danger. Like he's got a little bit of like the Michael Chandler in him a little bit, just willing to throw down and make it a war. And it's obviously he's not like the spectacular knockout artist, but like he has spectacular knockouts and he has a really well-rounded game. Um, I mean, the knockout of Terrence McKinney is like awesome, and Zellhuber was like a genuine prospect going into that fight at UFC at Noche UFC. Like he was one of like the highly touted people on that card, the fighters on that
Yeah.
card, where people were saying like this guy is he's going to be like the pride of Mexico sort of fighter. And Ribovics went in there and almost knocked him out at one point in the fight. I like Ribovics a lot in this fight. I don't know if I love finish. I feel like I might bet decision on this one, but yeah, I just feel like, I don't know, Nasrat won a split decision against Jared Gordon, just recently and lost to Bobby Green. I could, whatever. Those are some good opponents, but other than that, I just feel like this feels like Ribovics' fight to lose. Just
Yeah.
looking at all of it, the momentum behind him, everything. I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm just rooting for your Argentine roots here, but I like Ribovics.
We're betting with our hearts, not our minds today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the split decision loss to Jared Gordon from Nasrat, because I was seeing things online that people thought Jared Gordon should have won.
That's every Jared Gordon fight, though. He loses a split decision, and people think that he won. That's like the Jared Gordon experience. So,
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough. Going into our co-main event of the night, we got Cody Brundage versus Julian Marquez. Cody Brundage is obviously a fan favorite. People love him.
Yeah.
But No, not a joke.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Why do people hate him?
Well, people hate him right now because of how the last fight ended against Al Hassan.
Yes.
He took a knee, I think it was an illegal knee, and people thought that he was faking a head injury to get out of the fight because he was getting pieced up in that fight.
You're right.
Yeah.
But I think overall people still get behind him. And
yeah,
he's a good name. Everyone's disappointed with him for like he has everything to be a great fighter, and then it's just he's like he does really well during fights, and then he makes a couple bad decisions, and then he loses or he quits in his last fight.
Yeah.
So that's always the question mark with Cody Brundage. We'll start with Julian Marquez though, because he's had 3 losses in a row, all by KO or TKO. He is 34 years old, and you never want to see that from a guy who's 34 years old coming into another fight.
Right.
Like I mentioned, Cody Brundage has had some bad results since he's coming to the UFC. He's currently 4-5 with that no contest as well in his last fight. But I don't know, man. I think that Cody Brundage has everything to be a high-level fighter. And he really has been fighting some good high-level talent since he joined the UFC. He's got losses to Bo Nickel, Rodolfo Vieira, who I know just lost, but he's still got some pretty decent fights under his name. Michalo is just Chuck. He's lost to him as well. So I don't know. I think if you can avoid making mistakes, I think that overall he can mix it up a lot better than someone like Julian Marquez can. He's better on the ground, on the feet. You can probably give the edge to Julian Marquez a little bit, but Cody Brundage, half of his wins have been by KO. So he might not be landing a bunch of strikes, but when he lands, they got power behind them in a sense. So I think it's Cody's fight to lose, and he's proven to us that he will lose when it's his fight to lose. But you got to ride with him a little bit, I think, here. So even though he's the underdog, I do have him. I just don't feel confident with the guy who's older, coming off of 3 straight knockouts. Like that brain's all mumbo jumbo at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is the battle of mid. I mean, I love both. I love Brundage. I'm not trying to be a dick, but I mean, like 10-6 versus 9-5. That's like, you're basically below 500 in any other sport. You know what I mean? Like you're just not. Those aren't great fighting records.
Not at all.
And I think I'm with you. And even like at plus 114, I'm pretty confident with betting on Cody here just because I feel like he's good enough wrestling. Like he actually, say what you will about Cody Brundage. He actually fought pretty well against Bo Nickel, which is crazy to think. Like he actually put up a pretty good fight. He did some really good things against him. It's just he went up against like one of the greatest collegiate wrestlers in the world, basically. And it was, it just
Yeah.
what can you do about that? But he held his own. He did a good job. He upset Matt Reese, who was a really hyped, highly touted fighter. He dropped him on his head, knocked him out, and then he got illegal elbows from Amir Hassan. He's actually been fighting okay. He did not look good against Al Hassan. Actually, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Plus 114, I feel pretty confident in betting on Cody here, but this is definitely like if they were marketing this fight, it's the battle of mid. Because
100%. The only reason is the co-main event is because it has the potential to be an exciting fight.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And with Julian Marquez, his last one is against fucking Sam Alvey. Like it's tough betting a guy that's your last win
boy.
again.
That's bad.
Yeah.
First round knockout to Rodrigo. Oh, he's the guy that Barlow knocked out. That's right. That was bad.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, this guy's his brain is mush.
No, it is, dude.
Yeah.
At 34, especially.
Yeah.
Anyway, main event of the night: Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev. I was pretty surprised at these odds. I think I'm a Manel Kape hater. I don't know. It's like this because I don't like Muhammad Mokaev. And that fight was as boring as can be, but he still got the win. And I just think that Manel Kape is like, oh yeah, but except for Muhammad Mokaev, he's pretty good. And it's like, yeah, well, that means he can't fight the top talent, And I think these odds are skewed because against for Almabayev's fight against Nicolau, he should have done way better than he did. He went 1 for 6 on takedown attempts, which like you should be taking down Nicolau way more than that, So I think people are like kind of jumping off the hype train a little bit, even though this guy is on a 17 fight win streak and is 4-0 in the UFC, Again, Manel Kape, he's fought against some higher level opponents than Asu here, just through him being in the UFC longer. But Manel Kape lost to Matthias Nicolau, and Nicolau took him down twice. Nicolau didn't take Almabayev down once. I think he's going to hammer the takedowns. I think he's going to have a ton of success with the takedowns, even though Manel Kape has good takedown defense and he's good. He's good on the ground, like in general. But I just think, I don't know. I think Asu is a winner, and I can't say that about Manel Kape. If he was a winner, he would have taken a way different approach to that Muhammad Mokaev fight. But he took such a just fucking a shit approach, It's just like way too reserved. And I think Asu is just going to find a way to win, even if it has to go to decision here. So yeah, that's what I got here, I think.
Yeah, I kind of like I'm starting to love the odds on Almabayev a little bit. I think that these are pretty EV last name notwithstanding. This is like I don't know, Manel Kape, like you just look at his record, he's 31-7. So he's lost 20-7. I'm sorry, he's 31 and he's 20-7.
Yeah.
He does have some great wins, no question about it. Like he beat Kaya Sakura when he was in Risen, like 6 years ago in Japan.
Yeah,
but he's lost. He loses to all the elite competition, like Nicolau, Pantoja, Mokaev, and then he beats all of the other guys that he's supposed to beat. I think Manel Kape is very good, but I think that he's a little overrated because he's a great, big, boisterous personality. He's got an awesome fighting style. He's a lot of fun, but it's a little bit smoke and mirrors, where his fights aren't exactly as exciting as he makes them out to be because he's sort of dancing around a lot of the time. And he's also, it's flyweight, so it's not like a ton of power. His last fight, he entered the Matrix in his last fight. No question about it. He was like, he was in the zone and it was spectacular. But like before that, like you're right, the fight against Mokaev was so boring. His performance was so bad. Not necessarily Kape's fault, just because of the way Mokaev fights, but at the same time, I'm looking at Almabayev and he just, He doesn't have a ton of finishes. He's kind of probably a boring fighter himself. A lot of wrestling, a lot of control time, 9 submissions, only 3 knockouts and 21 wins. So we know how he wants to win this fight. It's going to be wrestling on the ground. And I kind of feel like he's going to be, if Makayev can, I kind of feel like it's going to be a little bit of the same here. And I would even consider just like locking it on decision for Almabayev, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Even just a win, like 2-1, like just hammer that. I feel like I just don't see like, I think like there's just like, there's winners and there's fighters, you know? And Almabayev has just proven to be a winner. You know, it doesn't matter what it takes. He will like grind out the win, where Kape just has proved the exact opposite. He'll beat the guys he's supposed to, and he'll lose to the guys that give him a challenge, you know? So it's hard to bet on a guy like that, I think. And I think that these odds are also built off of Almabayev's worst fight and Kape's best fight, you know? And so it's like a lot of recency bias involved in here. So yeah, I don't know. I got Almabayev. I think it's going to be an easy decision win for him.
I think you're right. I want Manel Kape to win because I want him to fight Pantoja, even though they have fought before. I just feel like Manel Kape would be very entertaining as a Manel Kape title fight week would be very entertaining. So we'd have that to look forward to. And I do think he'd be a good champion. But yeah, I'm just starting to come to the realization that he might just be like a little bit overrated.
Yeah.
And that's okay. He's really good at, he's a good sell for the UFC, but he also realistically has trouble cutting weight to a flyweight. And that's another issue that he has. And like, I don't know how much the UFC can rely on that, because apparently he walks around like 150, and that's so like just to cut like 24 pounds. I don't know.
Yeah. One of these guys is getting fraud checked Saturday night. You know, like it's either going to be like, oh, damn, Almabayev lost to Manel Kape. Everybody beats all the high level guys beat Manel Kape. So like Asu stands no chance, or it's going to be Kape losing and being like, damn, he really does just lose to anyone who's pretty good.
Kape has way more to lose in this fight than Almabayev does. Like for Almabayev, like whatever, if he loses, like nobody knows who Almabayev is other than people from his home country. Like nobody talks about Asu Almabayev. I mean, no disrespect, but that's just the case. People talk about Manel Kape. So like he's going to take a big hit here if he can't win this fight. So or at least put up a great performance and then, you know, losing a decision in a war. Like that's the least you want in this situation. So hammer Almabayev. Those odds are insane.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page. Yeah. Anyway, that's the card. Next week we got UFC 313, and I'm gonna make a little teaser announcement here. I think we're gonna be going live for it. So don't hold me accountable to that, but I think it will happen. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. We got Alex Pereira taking on Muhammad Mokaev is gonna be. Oh no, sorry. Magomed Ankalaev, sorry.
That would be fun to watch. I would watch that for sure.
So fucking he'd literally kill him.
Oh my God. No, I did see though, after Bryce Mitchell made the comments about who, he there was memes going around about, all right, Dana White the next morning is setting up the Pereira versus Bryce Mitchell fight.
Yeah, just fucking slaughter.
That's what you do when you need to punish somebody the UFC doesn't like. You just throw him against Pereira.
Literally.
So,
anyways,
could be the end of his run. We'll see.
100%. Awesome. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure, brother. Great episode of Insider Betting once more. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace.